Hello. Thanks for meeting with me once more. I'm Rob again. Got some coffee and something to say, so this is another Coffee with Rob. Cheers. So what I wanted to talk about today was, well, two things, and they're both fairly important. Number one, this coffee with me is just between us. The people who follow me on Facebook or the people who subscribe to me on YouTube. This doesn't get out anywhere else. So this is just a private chat between the people who really do, care about what I do and what I make, or at least at one point did, and me. Unabridged access to whatever's going through my head. So that's that. Now, the other thing is one of the few things that might actually be shared out of this series, but I think it's important to say. It's a lot that's been running through my head about this topic, and I just wanted to say something to just kind of nail it down. And quite honestly, I believe that if you have any kind of a group that has some bad actors in it who are really dragging a lot of muck through your hobby or through, whatever you're interested in. It could be a sports team following, it can be a political party, it could be anything. These things should be addressed by the body that makes up that fan base or whatever. And this is going to be mine. This is also going to be likely the only time I will ever bring up this topic, because I think once I say what I have to say, there won't be any kind of equivocation or any kind of doubt on where I stand. So, two bodies which I belong to have recently had, fairly recently at least, have had some people with some fairly high-profile circumstances that have really given our respective hobbies a bad name as far as their contributions and misdeeds or things surrounding their names. One group that I belong to are YouTube creators, and the other group is the role-playing creators and hobbyists. On the YouTube creators, if you followed any of the news around YouTube at all, Channel Awesome, a group that gathered together a lot of YouTube creators, was revealed to have a lot of behind-the-scenes, I don't know if abuse is the right word across the board, but it definitely took advantage of the talents, time, and goodwill of its contributors, and also allowed behavior that was, frankly, horrifying to happen behind the scenes, despite complaints being filed to the people who were ostensibly in charge of Channel Awesome. Things spiraled out of control until finally, pushed too far, some of the former contributors to the channel went public with the trials that they had gone through. And as a result, Channel Awesome nosedived in their subscribers, and a lot of just bad stuff boiled out. Which kind of hurt, because I did follow Channel Awesome, and I really didn't feel, through what I'd seen, that any of this stuff had happened. You had no idea unless you were actually there. And, as a YouTube creator, Channel Awesome was a successful group of producers. The Nostalgia Critic, as run by Doug Walker. Sorry, Rob is his brother. But Doug Walker, had a lot of good output. His critic reviews were great, but he had a lot of other stuff that entertained me. There was some stuff that didn't. I mean, YouTube is an interesting thing. many of us want to be, movie creators, but we don't have things like high-end budgets and a lot of times the kind of training and experience. So when we go out to make something, yeah, it may look awfully amateurish. That was Channel Awesome. They had a lot of really interesting ideas and a lot of things that, because of their, limitations, turned out to be kind of hokey, but, still entertaining. It was good heart, and I enjoyed it a lot. So when I heard about all this stuff, it really troubled me. It really did. I'm not a person who will go out on Facebook and immediately just, start posting about, how dare this person, how dare that person, and jump on, and because, let's face it, the internet is already full of any number of people who rush to embrace the victim. It's always been kind of one of my concerns that we don't let the justice system work anymore. It's not guilty or innocent until proven guilty. A lot of times it's guilty as soon as one person without any evidence starts pointing a finger. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's not a good thing that a lot of people are coming out. It is. It is. These kind of things should not be hidden away. I just fear that, some innocent people are going to be swept away, so I usually prefer to reserve my judgment, wait and see how things play out, and usually there's a preponderance of evidence for these, horrible people who've been absolutely crucified in the news, figuratively. And usually their careers are shattered, and they will not recover from it. This is something that they are going to be branded with for the rest of their lives and careers. Channel Awesome seems to have kind of slipped out from under that to a certain extent, but to say that I haven't gone back to them and continued enjoying their stuff is, well, that is the case. Every once in a while I do still get a trickle through. It'll show the latest Nostalgia Critic review or something, and it's like, it would be nice to go back and look at that, but I still, even though most people didn't say that Doug Walker himself directly did any of the things that the accusations came through, a lot of people were of the opinion, yeah, well, he's kind of in charge. He's one of the names on the marquee. If he didn't know about it, then he wasn't doing his job very well. So without being there and knowing the whole organization and all that, I just kept myself clear. It really kind of got toxic in the community, understandably so. And, it's they eventually, almost everybody left Channel Awesome with the exception of the Walkers and their core contributors. And a few others, but, not much. They were pared back down to very little. So they're still making content and everything, and I think, the Nostalgia Critic still has millions of viewers. But, they definitely took a black eye to that, and I feel kind of bad. I work very hard as a YouTube content creator to make sure that my content is fine for everybody. I don't swear. I don't do, any kind of, risque or anything I wouldn't feel comfortable showing to my own son, who's 13 and impressionable. So I'm very conscious to have a platform that does that. So that bothered me a lot, and that really made me double down on my process and make sure that I'm always above the board, which isn't hard for me. That's kind of my nature. Then in the gaming side of things, creatives oftentimes are accused of being, eccentric and out there. And a lot of times that's been used to excuse personality aspects that are not good and a lot of times not healthy. You don't have to worry about me. I'm in a pretty decent headspace, and I'm not one of these people who will, post on Facebook about, depression and everything. I'm not depressed. I'm I've got a pretty good self-esteem. I'm in a good spot. I'm worried about my future, like anybody. I'm worried about all the other things people are worried about: the climate, the governance, and my job, and all that. Sure, who isn't? I'm no Zen master who can say that I'm free of concern for everything, but I am one of a large body of people, many of whom are in questionable states of mind. But there are also people who come in with a lot of negative traits that only come out after they've already been allowed to hurt people. And after those circumstances happen, all we can generally do is just try to react, help the victims, and make sure that the word gets out so that these people don't have a chance to offend again. Two cases come to mind, one of which has affected me fairly closely. Accusations at game creator and designer Frank Mentzer hurt me quite a bit because I've met Frank. I've been to his house. I talked with him at some length about the hobby and his role in it, and I had a really good time. And I always thought he was top water, good solid character, a treasure to the hobby, a vast well house of knowledge and information of the founding of our hobby, really, because he was there when it was being created and had a big hand in it. And then things started coming out that I'm not going to go into all of the details. That is not what this is for. If you are curious, all you have to do is put in Channel Awesome Scandal, Frank Mentzer Scandal, or the third person, which we're going to get to in a second. But yeah, Frank was accused of sending inappropriate private messages to somebody he was working with, and then that went into her social media, and he expressed some rather radical and not very sympathetic views towards victims of sexual assault. And that got him ousted from her group. And since then, he has demonstrated some fairly antisocial traits. This is again really, really hurts me. Not my business side. And I don't know if I really would have supported what he was doing. He had these grand ideas for a new role-playing game he was going to come out based on his world in the Dungeons & Dragons universe, and he was going to employ a great number of writers and editors and artists and things to make this grand project work, which, could have been really cool. And then he's got his own role-playing game. It's a small little thing called Fairy Tales, and I'm sure that hasn't been nearly as hot as it might have been before this whole thing came out. But yeah, I've seen messages with his name appended to them, and I could not believe again. I wanted to make excuses. I wanted to back out of that association and put him back where he was in my level of esteem. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to burn any of the books of his that I have or anything like that. Even flawed people can still make beautiful things. And, there may be people who do that. I don't. Likewise, the people who came forward brought with them the evidence. It's pretty black and white. And, again, couched in some language that I don't find to be very comfortable at all. Again, not really when I first read it, did not want to believe it. Wanted to believe it was forged or hacked or what have you. And maybe even a lot of it could have been smoothed over had he addressed it and apologized for different behaviors and things like that. But to the best of my knowledge, he hasn't. I have unfriended him because the whole circumstances around that just were starting to develop into this really toxic thing, and I didn't want that constantly funneling through my Facebook feed, so I unfollowed him. I don't think I unfriended him. I unfollowed him. Just because I didn't want all of that at my doorstep, too. But I looked forward to seeing him at the at Gamehole Con that I go to every year. He was not asked to be a guest last year as a result of the scandal. The scandal actually started at the end of 2017. In 2018, he was asked to not be a guest at Gamehole Con. This year, he's been disinvited from being a guest of honor at GaryCon, which he'd been a guest of honor at from every one since the first one. I think they're up to 12 now. So, that is, for old school gamers, this is, one of the few big events. So, him not being invited to it anymore is kind of a big statement from some of the people who are really into, the seams of the hobby. So I'm pretty sad about that. Do I think justice is being done? Like I said, a person who is flawed can still make beautiful things. And I'm not thinking that he's done creating and making cool things that might be worthwhile to own. Even if he has some very antiquated views on people and in terms of the gender roles and society. I wish that we could move past that. I just don't see it happening. We're just too sensitive these days. And it's not like the old days where you knew somebody somebody could tell a racist joke or something. And you'd be like, "Oh, okay, he thought that was funny." These days, if you get caught in public telling a racist joke, nobody wants to touch you. You are a pariah because you are racist. That's how it is in this society. Is that better? Is that worse? I'll let you guys talk about it and think about it. But I think it's a good thing that things like this are getting out in the open a bit more. I think we're a little too sensitive as a culture now. So you can never go back. But yeah. And then we come to the last subject of this conversation, Mr. Zach S. or Zach Smith or Zach Sabbath or whatever he went by. If you need to have that many aliases, well, there's issues. The man is a writer, game designer, done a lot of things. Most of his things that I've seen or heard of are kind of edgy. Not the kind of content I usually prefer. As a matter of fact, the few things that I've read of his I did not care for. Both in design concept as well as his edge factor. It's pretty much antithetical to my own personal style. At the same time, I can't deny that the guy had some good ideas. Significant enough that he was asked many times to be part of fairly popular game projects, including, and probably most significant to many of you, he was a playtester and close to the vest for a lot of the people in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know what he had a hand in, what he didn't. I know he's probably better known for work that he did in other projects, like doing different things for Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which is a kind of a retro clone game based heavily on older styles of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's most notorious because the games that the modules especially that come out for it are often, well, let's just say mature content, the kind of thing that just nobody else really does, except for a couple of independent producers, most of whom revel in being edgy. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that they do, and Mr. Smith seems to do the same. And he also had his whistleblower moment. From what I've heard some things that he wasn't a very pleasant person to be around, and since this came out, a lot of people started pointing the finger and saying, "Yeah, I knew the guy was kind of a scumbag, but this takes to another level." He had an ex-girlfriend who posted about how he was a horrible person, and I'm not going to go into details. Again, a few strokes of the keys, right up there on the browser bar. scandal. You'll find it all. It's not hard, and it's unsettling and it's extremely unpleasant. And the people involved have built a long case against him with a history of bad acting. And I'm not going to say I take any kind of pleasure in it just because he has a different style or different sentiment than I have. I don't. I don't like to hear about anybody who hurts somebody else. It's terrible. It's also terrible when people take their whatever esteem their fame and their niche has given them, and it inflates their ego to the point they think they can get away with things like that. It's revolting to me. But apparently, that's where he was. Now that everything has come out, he has been. History is working at scrubbing him out of a lot of projects he was involved in. He is even, somewhat again begrudgingly, being excised out of any future projects for Lamentations of the Flame Princess, even though the designer still, thinks of him fondly. But their lawyers, their legal team has told them it's probably a good idea to cut him loose. So that's happening. So these things happen in the hobby. These things happen all over, unfortunately. I mean, if you hear about a trainer who abused hundreds to thousands of gymnasts, many of whom were vulnerable young girls. Horrible, horrible things. And when it's closer to you and closer to your hobby, it hurts the worse. Even if you yourself don't do any of this, even if nobody that you know has anything to do with any of this, it still hurts. As a collective body, if you have any empathy at all, it sucks. It really does. And I don't like to wallow in the muck and deal with it. I'm not a social justice warrior, as people are labeling anybody who speaks up. Which the fact that they use something that should be virtuous, a warrior for social justice? Wow, what's the downside about wanting social justice? Social justice means that somebody who has done something wrong in society is getting punished. How is that not something that should be urged and worked for? I don't get it. I know a lot of people bear that tag with pride. That's not me. I'm not a crusader. I prefer to lead and instruct by my actions, by my product, by what I put out, the face that I have. I don't address the subject because I try to be the person that, by my example, can take this act, these predatory actions, these antiquated ideas of that basically haven't fit since we climbed out of our mother's basements. I don't like to think about it. I sympathize with the victims. I do. I wish we could fix the people who do these things before they have a chance to do them. Our society is kind of a sick one at the moment, too. But I'm hopeful we can get better. And I will never, I pledge, as part of this statement, I pledge that I will never tolerate that kind of behavior in my presence. To speak up if I see somebody who is being abusive towards another gamer, be it if they are of a different sex, if they're a different religion, a different race, it doesn't matter. We have the privilege of having a hobby that almost anybody can get into and enjoy. Maybe not the way you do, sure. And sometimes that may lead to conflict. Yes. But if wiser heads prevail and we can be mature about things and decent, not necessarily good, but decent, well, we can work through just about anything. And if that sometimes means exclusion, sometimes that's healthy. But let's do things like adults. And if somebody does do any of this stuff, I have absolutely no problem in casting them out of the society. I also believe that these people should be prosecuted where guilty to the fullest extent, if possible. Because, again, this is an offensive behavior and most of the time a criminal one. Harassment, abuse, these are not things that should be tolerated in a civilized society. We have gone past that, I certainly hope. Individual people may still be struggling with that, but let's face it, it's time to treat the people around you like people. Not as sexual objects, not as inferiors. And in my hobby, they're gamers. Each one of them could be that bright spark of light that makes your game better. They may be the person who runs the next game that you could have a really great time with. Everybody has value. No matter how much at first they may not seem to be, no matter what preconceived notions you may have, we've got to work past that. We've got to work to be better. If you are comfortable with, racism and, abusive behavior, you're not going to enjoy my company. You're just not. If that kind of thing comes up and you're tolerant of it, I'll call you out too. If you want to unsubscribe from me and block me or what have you, well, go ahead. This is something that I'm not flexible on. I will not tolerate this behavior. I will not support this behavior. If I do not seem to get outraged, it's because I believe that sometimes cooler heads must prevail and try to maintain a level of objectivity so that justice can prevail. Because without objectivity, all you have is vengeance. So I tried to be that as much as I can. And I am only human, so there's only so far that gets me, but I've got a pretty long tether. Again, I really hate to talk about this. I wish this wasn't a problem. I wish we all just played this game, had fun with it. I'm glad there are people who don't make games just the way that I like them, that I play them, that there is something for everybody. People who like edgy games can find them, and that's fine. From what I understand, this Zach Smith made some good games. Some people really liked his stuff. That's fine. It's not for me, and that's also fine. And I can only hope that these people come around and they see the error of their ways, or learn some empathy for people around them or people who've been hurt, and go back to being inclusive, to thinking that forgiveness and just being a good person are valuable and important. They should be. That's what I think. Yeah, this is a one-sided thing. This is me really what I feel. I felt that this video had to be made. It's just at a crux, a point right now where so many stories are all converging at this point. I've been silent up till now. Not because I've condoned anything. I don't. Not because I don't believe the victims. And most of the time, like I said, many of them brought out proof of what happened, or had so many corroborations of their stories, you can't really dismiss it. It really makes you question your heroes or the people that you root for sometimes. And I'm not the only person who's ever had their heroes suddenly turn out to be less than what you hoped they would be. But that's my feelings on it. Again, I'm sad. My heart's a little bit broken. I'm a bit down about this. All I can do is promise to you, my viewers, my friends, that I will never be that person. I will not be the person that you find a report on saying that a whole litany of horrible things happened because of me. I hold myself to a higher standard than that, and I want to assure you, you can believe me on this. I'm not that bad actor, nor will I ever be. I hold all of you in far too much esteem for that. I hold the people that come to my table in far too much esteem for that. I look at everybody, even the most annoying people in my life, everybody is worth a certain amount of respect, and nobody is worth the kind of things that are these accusations are coming out in. So no matter how you feel about yourself too, I want you to know that I respect you, and you are worthwhile. You are the reason why I put aside my personal time to make things to entertain and engage you. And you are some of the best company I can have coffee with. So, it's a sick, sad time, but there is hope. If we work together, if we hold ourselves to higher standards, if we don't tolerate this kind of behavior, and we move forward, this can turn out all of the pain, all of the prejudice, all of it can be a warning sign to everybody of what we could become again if we just let it happen. All it takes for evil to win is for good men to do nothing. Good men and good women. Let's amend that. For good people to do nothing. If I ever see anything like that, I will never, ever tolerate it again. And I will call it out where I see it. Something like that happens in front of me. If you come to my table, I expect you to hold yourselves to the same standards, or you will not be welcome at my table. But if you are at my table, and we can get a good, diverse group of people, we can tell some amazing stories and have a really good time. So, thank you. I just needed to say this. And it seemed like a good thing to do over a cup of coffee. I will be posting this with a link to my YouTube. Obviously, it'll be on my YouTube page. It'll also have a link to it for my OmnusI Facebook account, where you will be able to catch this link as well. I urge you, if you want other people to know of my stance on this, I'm fine with it. Direct them to it. I'm fine. Everything that I said, I will say in front of anyone. Because it's important. It is important that we self-correct. It is important that you know the kind of people that you get your entertainment from. I don't want you to ever, find that the next person that you really liked, who made good content, turned out to be a monster. That's, no, I don't want that. I don't want your good experiences to be tainted. So you will never see that from me. And I hope you never see it again. Every time it happens is a tragedy. So, thank you. And hopefully next time we talk, we can have a more pleasant conversation than this. May your dice always roll well when you need them, in life and in the game. Thank you, and farewell.